drawn and redrawn, the making of India's internal boundaries.
Hi, and welcome back to India's State Stories, a project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is supported by the Center for Legislative Education and Research, Flame University, Pune.
Now we turn towards the last set of princely states that became the Part C states. These were the unique territories that were governed directly by the central government through a chief commissioner. This status was reserved for such states that were either deemed underdeveloped or held strategic importance. They were also generally intended as temporary arrangements later to be merged into either Part A or B states. The following episodes take a careful look at each Part C state and the story behind its formation. Listen to the first 3 episodes of Season 2 to understand a deeper context. These episodes give an overview of the entire process of integration, along with an introduction to the legal instruments and some key personalities which made it possible. More details are in the show notes below, and let's dive in.
Today, we're heading to a part of India you might not know as well, but one that played this, surprisingly crucial role in how modern India came together: the old princely state of Kutch. Yeah, Kutch is interesting because it throws this paradox at you right away. On the one hand, it's known for being really isolated, and its administration, people at the time called it backward. But then its people. They were famous, really famous far and wide, for overseas trade and this incredible knack for business, entrepreneurial spirit, How does that square? That's one thing we want to figure out today. So our mission here is to explore why Kutch, this kind of unique place, suddenly became so strategically important right after India's partition. We'll look at why the new Indian government felt it needed direct control and how that very move ended up sparking a pretty major international border issue. Okay, let's dive into this fascinating bit of history. So to get Kutch, we need to go back a bit. It wasn't new. Its rulers, they traced their family back centuries.
Oh yeah, way back. To the 14th century, actually. That's when Samar Rajputs conquered the area. A warrior clan set up a dynasty there.
And for a lot of that early time, it was pretty separate, kind of doing its own thing. And like we said, the administration wasn't exactly cutting edge. Backwards is the word often used.
Right.
And this is the really cool part, even with that backward admin, the Kutchi people themselves were known everywhere for trade, overseas trade, and just being amazing entrepreneurs. It's such a contrast, isn't it? You'd think you need a slick government for big trade. How did they manage it? Maybe because the government wasn't so involved.
That's a great question. And it really does speak to how resilient and self-reliant the Kutchis were. Often, where state control is lighter, community networks, merchant guilds, they step up, they fill that gap. Their sea links, especially across to East Africa, the Middle East, those were old routes, really old, predated the British. And these networks, they were mostly self-run, built on trust, old customs. So in a way, maybe they did thrive because they weren't heavily managed or taxed by a modern state machine. That drive, it was cultural, almost separate from the official government, at least for a long time.
Interesting. So it was kind of bubbling under the surface.
Exactly. But things started changing as outsiders got more involved. The British, for instance, their influence grew in the early 1800s. That came after a really messy period. Invasions from the Muslim rulers in Sindh next door. It destabilized things quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
The British stepped in, first to sort of calm things down, then gradually pulled Kutch more into their system. And the big step was in 1924. The Kutch Agency merged with Kathiawar and Palampur agencies, became the Western India States Agency.
Right, so more centralized under the British Raj then.
Yeah, even if internally it kept a lot of its old character.
And Kutch wasn't small, right? Despite being isolated, was it actually important in the region? Or just kind of off to the side?
Oh, definitely important, especially locally, not marginal at all. It was a big state. Area-wise, over 8,400 square miles. That's like Slovenia today, roughly.
Wow. Yeah.
Population just over 500,000. And the revenue, nearly 80 lakh rupees.
80 lakh. That's 8 million rupees. That sounds like a lot for back then.
It was a very substantial sum for a princely state. Kutch was officially seen as an important state. And its ruler, the Maharao, he actually had a higher status than many other rulers in Kathiawar, even though Kutch was sort of culturally and linguistically part of that group.
Okay.
So yeah, it had weight, command of respect.
So, big area, good money, respected ruler, but still this backward admin and independent traders. It's quite a mix. Which brings us to that key bit of geography, the thing that really defines Kutch and becomes super important later, The Rann of Kutch. What's so special about the Rann? Why does its geography matter so much?
The Rann is, well, it's pretty unique. A huge part of Kutch's territory is basically underwater for much of the year. Imagine this vast, salty marshland. It floods in the monsoon. Then, for months, it dries up completely, cracks open, becomes this barren desert landscape.
Right. Half water, half desert, depending on the season.
Exactly. And that makes everything difficult. Living there, governing it, and especially marking clear borders. How do you draw a line on land that disappears underwater half the time? It's constantly changing. And that feature, that ambiguity, becomes massively important when we get to the border disputes later on. It's a land that literally changes its face.
Okay, so Kutch. Unique, kind of self-reliant, important in its own way, geographically distinct. Then boom, 1947, partition. How did that just completely rewrite Kutch's story? It's the whole reason for being, almost.
Yeah, rewrite is the word. Overnight, everything changed. Kutch went from being this somewhat remote state to a frontier state. Suddenly, it had this long, difficult-to-patrol border with a brand new country, Pakistan.
And that wasn't just lines on a map, right? That meant immediate danger.
Immediate, serious security worries. Right away. Take the Junagadh crisis, October 47, that was tense. Junagadh was another state near Pakistan, tried to join Pakistan against its people's wishes. Big standoff. Well, during that crisis, there were solid reports. Pakistani troops moving around in Sindh, right next door to Kutch. That set off alarm bells in Delhi, made Kutch's vulnerability crystal clear.
And the Rann. The unique geography we talked about.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that's not just interesting, it's a problem.
A huge problem. Remember, it dries up, becomes passable for several months. Well, that opens up routes. For infiltration, maybe worse. And during that dry season, there were questions about the loyalty of the nomadic Muslim tribes living there. To India, I mean.
Because they had connections across the new border.
Exactly. Historical ties. In such a tense time, you couldn't just assume their allegiance. Another security headache. So the Indian government moved fast, sent in the Central Reserve Police right away for protection. Plus, other military planning was happening.
So it showed just how strategically vital Kutch had become almost instantly. So Kutch transforms from this inward-looking trading state with iffy admin to a critical front line. Militarily, yes. But were there other things pushing it onto Delhi's radar for, tighter control?
Definitely. It wasn't just about soldiers and borders. Kutch had internal issues, too, big ones. It was known for being prone to severe periodic famines, really bad ones, which meant it often needed financial aid from the central government. Big bailouts, basically, just to cope. That wasn't sustainable. Not for Kutch, and not for a new country trying to get on its feet. So it was an economic issue, too, a drain. Needed better management, central resources.
Okay, so security threats, economic weakness. What else?
Well, think bigger picture. Strategy. India lost Karachi in partition. That was a massive blow, a major port gone. So India desperately needed new ports, especially on the west coast. And where did they plan to develop a major one?
Kandla in Kutch.
Exactly. Kandla port. Hugely important for trade, for connecting Western India, a top priority. So you put it all together. The new border security risks, the repeated famines needing central money, the absolute strategic need for Kandla port, plus that existing backward administration, it all pointed one way. Direct central control was deemed necessary for its development. It just had to happen. Security, economy, administration, it was a perfect storm.
Okay, so the pressure is mounting for central control. How did that actually play out? Did Delhi just step in, or was Kutch involved in the decision?
It was more complex than just Delhi dictating terms. Local politics were bubbling too. There was the Praja Parishads agitation.
The Praja Parishad, who were they?
A local group pushing for, more democracy, responsible government within Kutch. Their demands sort of signaled a desire for change, for modernization, maybe for closer ties to the new India, so they were part of the backdrop.
Right.
But the really key moment, it was the Maharao of Kutch himself. He went to VP Menon.
The VP Menon, the main guy integrating the princely states.
The very same. In mid-March 1948, the Maharao asks Menon to help figure things out, mediate. This shows the Maharao knew things had to change. Kutch was in a tough spot, and he actually suggested two main options himself.
What were they?
Either merge Kutch with the Union of Saurashtra nearby, that was a bigger group of states, or let the central government take over Kutch directly as a chief commissioner's province.
So he put the ball in Delhi's court, essentially.
Pretty much. He was looking for the most stable future for his state and people.
So, faced with those options, and considering everything we've discussed, what did Menon and the government decide?
Well, Menon looked at the strategic needs, the security situation, the need for development, and he recommended keeping Kutch directly under central control. Sardar Patel, another key figure in unifying India, of course, he strongly backed that idea. He got the strategic importance.
Makes sense.
Things moved quickly then. The Maharao signed the merger agreement. That was May 4th, 1948. And then on June 1st, 1948, the government of India officially took over administration. Kutch became a chief commissioner's province, a really fast, decisive shift.
So what did that mean, being a chief commissioner's province? How did Kutch fit into the new India compared to other states?
It was a specific category. Kutch was one of only 5 states that were individually taken over like this. They were called Part C states in the Constitution. Basically, it meant direct rule from Delhi. Not merged into a bigger province, not fully autonomous. The idea was the central government needed direct oversight for a while. For a specified period, they said, to really push development, sort out the admin, handle the strategic side, given all those unique challenges.
A kind of focused intervention.
Exactly. And legally, it changed too. After the merger, from August 1st, 1949, Kutch wasn't technically an acceding state under the old 1935 Act anymore. It was just part of India under central control. No ambiguity.
Okay, so you'd think merger done, central administration in place, story over for Kutch's integration. Smooth sailing from here.
Not quite. This is where it gets even more complicated, actually, because the story didn't end there. The merger itself kind of set the stage for another major issue, a big, long-lasting territorial dispute between India and Pakistan.
About the border.
Precisely. About the border between Sindh, which was now in Pakistan, and the Greater Rann of Kutch, which was now officially part of India.
Ah, the Rann again. That ambiguous landscape.
Exactly. It became the focus. Pakistan actually challenged the whole basis of Kutch joining India. They questioned the validity of the accession back in August 47.
How so? What was their argument?
It was quite technical. Pakistan argued that India only really got control of the territory Kutch actually possessed on the date of the merger, May 4th, 1948, not the earlier accession date. And they claimed that if Pakistan had exercised any independent jurisdiction in the disputed Rann area between August 47 and May 48, then India's claim to that specific bit of land was invalid.
Wow, that's a very specific legal point. Challenging the timing and the exact territory involved.
Yes, it was digging into the details of the transition.
So this wasn't just a polite disagreement over maps then. How did this play out? Did it get serious?
Oh, it got very serious. It started with diplomatic notes being exchanged from July 1948 onwards, lots of back and forth. But it didn't stay diplomatic. It actually escalated into shooting. Open hostilities in April 1965.
Fighting broke out.
Yes, significant border clashes. This was actually before the main Indo-Pak War later that year. It really showed how tense that border was.
Goodness. How did they finally resolve it, did they?
Thankfully, yes. It didn't stay a military issue forever. In 1968, they agreed to take it to an international tribunal for arbitration. The tribunal looked at all the history, the maps, the geography, and it made a ruling.
And the result?
It awarded 90% of disputed territory to India. So India's claim over most of the Rann was upheld, and that helped solidify the modern border we see today.
90%. That's a huge validation for India's position. So looking back, even though this border fight happened after the merger, it sounds like the potential for such a dispute, the sheer sensitivity of that border.
Yeah.
That was a big reason for bringing Kutch under central control in the first place.
Absolutely. You've hit it exactly. That looming international dimension, the undefined border, the risk of conflict, it heavily reinforced the need for Delhi to be directly in charge. It wasn't just about internal development. It was about managing a volatile frontier, defending India's claim, connecting it to the bigger picture. Like you said, it just highlights those intense geopolitical pressures back then. A region's specific geography, its location, could instantly elevate it to national strategic importance, even leading to conflict and needing international intervention. Kutch wasn't just some local issue, it was right at the heart of India's national security concerns.
What a story. Kutch goes from this isolated, quirky state entrepreneurs everywhere but backward admin to suddenly being this critical frontier zone for a brand new nation. And its integration, driven by security, economics, and strategy, ends up defining not just Kutch's future, but part of India's international border through a major dispute. It really shows how local factors, geography, economy, the specific situation, can get caught up in these huge national and international events, doesn't it?
It really does, and it makes you think, doesn't it? How often do these unique regional characteristics, the land itself, the local people, the economic possibilities, who feels loyal to whom, become the very things nations fight over when they're being built or when borders are being drawn? Kutch is such a clear case where all those things came together, made it far more important than anyone might have guessed from its past isolation.
Absolutely. So think about that as we wrap up. How often are geopolitical moves, even in places that seem remote or off the beaten path, really driven by this complex mix? Geography, local loyalties, money, old arguments. Can you think of other times in history where a place's unique features made it such a flashpoint in building a nation or drawing a border? Something to chew on.